Today on Between the Lines, the celebrated author who revolutionized the way we look at love, marriage, and relationships, Erica Jong. Welcome, I'm Barry Kibrick. 40 years ago, Erica shocked the world with her best-selling book, Fear of Flying. With nearly 30 million copies sold, we were all affected by her honesty about topics never before discussed publicly. Now, with her book, Fear of Dying, she does it again with another topic that is also too often taboo, as she shows us the strength it takes to face life and death head-on while still laughing.
I'm a writer today because I was a reader when I was 11 years old, and it was...
You do not need to prove your state of happiness to anybody.
Most of these speeches were as much as a month in preparation.
Characters, the heroes in this book, are seekers of truth in a story that involves a lot of
You
corruption.
don't get a chance to really talk about what's real, and it's the perfect thing to do.
Erica, we just discussed in the green room, it's been over 7 years or 7 years?
I think it's 7 years,
Well,
but who's counting?
Well,
right?
I'm so grateful that you're back on the show. Welcome to Between the Lines.
Well, you're so phenomenal as an interviewer. How could one not come back?
Well, you know, in fact, when I read this, what I realized I needed to do was, it is the work is so relatable to so many people nowadays that I'm taking it out of the realm of fiction. Just for a moment. I know it's we know it's all fiction, but what is it that someone said? The essence of fiction is really autobiography.
Life.
It's life itself.
It's life.
So I want to talk about this life that you're writing about here. And the first thing, life. These are the words that struck me. Life is passion, but now I know what passion costs.
That's really true. As we get older, you know, we're all intimidated about getting older. And people think, you know, Woody Allen said, I'm not afraid of death, I just don't want to be there when it happens.
You put us there when it's happening. And it really is about aging parents.
Yes.
And how they deteriorate. You can't help it.
And they become so frail, and you see in them, in a way you see your future.
And that's what you say, and in fact, you use the words, I'd like to find it exactly. Oh, I found it.
Yes.
Do we hold on to our parents, or are we holding on to our status as children?
Exactly. I mean, I remember, people say, well, how'd this book take you 9 years to write? Because it did. It took me 9 years to write because my parents were dying. My mom died at 101.
Oh,
my father
blessed.
At 93. He went first. My daughter had 3 children, and my stepdaughter had 1 child. My husband nearly died. So life intervened, and life does intervene. And unless life is in your book, nobody wants to read your book. When I teach writing, I teach a course called How to Tell the Story of Your Life when I go to Rancho La Puerta in Mexico. It's the only place I teach now. And where we begin by outlining the moment in your life when your perception changed. Was it when you had a terrible failure? When you had a great success? Was it when your mother died? Was it when your child was born, your grandchild was born? But I always tell the people who want to write the story of their lives, you start at a point of epiphany, a point where things are shifting in your consciousness. You don't go back to your great-grandparents. That's what amateurs do. That can come in a flashback. You want to find the moment in your life when things shifted and when you suddenly saw things differently, saw your own life differently, saw your mortality differently.
Well, you say, in fact, I can see that epiphany where it happens here, and what makes it, your awareness of it, is the connectivity, that we are all interwoven in this life. And
We are
when
connected.
We are connected. And when that shift happens, I don't want to expound it to the point where the world shifts because your life shifts. But for all intents and purposes, you see the world shift when your life shifts.
You see your life differently. Look, I have a terrace in New York where I grow stuff. And sometimes I go out, I have lavender and sage and things like that, and I see the dead leaves fertilize the soil, and suddenly the little green roots perk up. And the dead leaves are fertilizing the little green shoots, and that's human beings, for God's sake. And until you're a grandparent, you don't understand it.
Oh, and just not only that, but you also notice, and as you were describing those leaves, when you're with your parents, and you now are a grandparent, so you know that you're then closer to becoming your parents soon.
Exactly.
You realize how quickly, and these are your words, the spirit flees.
Exactly. That is perfect. But you don't have to be a literal grandparent. You can have a niece or a nephew or a younger friend. I don't believe that reproducing is the only way to get wise. And in fact, I miss zero population growth, if you want to know the truth. We are polluting our planet because of overpopulation. Not everybody has to, make babies. There are some people who shouldn't be parents because they're so meshuggah. And I used to have a therapist who would say, Erica, let me just remind you, there's meshuggah and then there's meshuggah. And that is true. There are some people who really don't want children and are not suited to have children. Leave them alone, give them birth control, I say. But if you long for a child, yes, you should have a child. If you long for a grandchild, you can't force your kids to have a grandchild. They have to do it when they're ready.
When I finished this book, I spoke with my family about it, and I said what makes it so relatable, and why I said we will discuss it not as fiction, was that every generation can see themselves in this, from the aging parent to the mother-daughter relationship, which we know is one of the most unique relationships there are, but also there's the wisdom that you give out here. And I want to share some of that wisdom.
Please do.
Because as I think this is the one that made me laugh, because that's what's interesting about a book about dying.
It's
is
a
when
funny
It's a
book.
funny book,
Right.
exactly. It's a funny book. And part of it was this: parenting. Half of parenting is to keep your pie hole sealed, meaning shut your mouth.
Shut your mouth, right. I sometimes find with my daughter and stepdaughter, and now I have two granddaughters. One is 10, one is 6. And you just have to shut up. You have to shut up. The granddaughters are more tolerant of your advice than the daughters.
You talk about connections, and we spoke about it for a moment, but I want to read your words. We all want connections, and the velocity of our culture makes it harder and harder to find. Yet, quote unquote, we've never been this connected. And you point out the interesting dichotomies between it, because there are differences in connections, and throughout the book there are connections that the characters have that really go through a metamorphosis.
Absolutely. Totally metamorphosis. My heroine, Vanessa Wonderman, a retired actress who's 60, and she can only play grandmothers now and great-grandmothers. You know what happens to female actors. It's tragic, because just when they reach the point where their work is the best, they can't get a part. I have a dear friend, Shirley Knight, a great actor who's won every award there is, and she always said, I want to do King Lear. I don't want to do Queen Lear. I want to do King Lear as a female. And I would say to her, you're going to have to produce it yourself. There's no other way it can happen.
Well, that's a little plot in the book, by the way,
Right.
between, let's say, Isadora
And
Wing.
Shirley inspired it.
She did. Okay,
My
you could
dear
see
friend.
that part in there, and Vanessa, the character, has to almost behind her back make that happen.
Absolutely. Well, what's happened to artists is we have to finance our own work now. This has to do with the internet and all the robots that have taken over our lives. The only artist that I can remember who had the guts recently, I mean, there have been others in the past, to stand up and say, this is Taylor Swift. I will not give Spotify my music. You don't pay a fair royalty. And she's powerful enough to do that because she's very young, she's very successful, but songwriters and actors and musicians are like athletes and ballet dancers. They may be very famous now, but where will they be in 15 years?
Well,
It's a short lifespan being an artist, like being an athlete. So if we're not paid during the time of our lives when we're selling, we're going to wind up bag ladies. And Taylor Swift understands that in a way that most people of her age don't understand it.
The thing that caught my eye with these words, because I believe a lot of this happens when we age, kindness is the highest wisdom.
You know, Fear of Flying is about your 20s. Isadora is 29, about to be 30. Fear of Dying is really about what happens between your 60s and your 70s, which is you know who you are, and you know you're not going to be here forever, and you develop generativity, what Erik Erikson called generativity, which is giving back.
But you know, in your own book, you write this question. Again, I know it's fictional, but your question, who am I really?
Right. But, you know, I think, Barry, that at every stage of our lives, we say, who am I? And at every stage as we turn 30, we say, who am I? As we turn 13, we say, who am I? As we turn 40, we say, who am I? At every crossroads. I mean, honestly, my 11-year-old grandson said to me the other day, Grandma Erica, I'm having a tough puberty. He's 11 and a half, right? And I said, well, anybody who doesn't drop dead at 8 has a tough puberty, so get over it. And that leads to an incident that I won't tell because I don't want to embarrass my adorable Maxie.
I promise I won't. It's between me and you. You know, you talked about the difficulties of aging, and you use, again, these words. Beginnings are easy, but endings are hard. That goes for writers, and that goes for all of us in life.
Absolutely. Each period in our lives, each crossroads, we have to fight like hell to find out who are we and what do we want in the next phase. Absolutely.
In Fear of Dying, it is really also joy of living. And you use these words that I think puts a spin on it. We are all too convinced of our individuality. Maybe the secret is to become part of the whole.
I believe that totally. There's a prayer that begins Fear of Dying, and it's from a Reform Sitter prayer book, and it goes like this. Days pass and the years vanish, and we walk sightless among miracles. Lord, fill our eyes with seeing and our minds with knowing. Let there be moments when your presence, like lightning, illumines the darkness in which we walk. Help us to see wherever we gaze that the bush burns unconsumed, and we, clay touched by God, will reach out for holiness and exclaim in wonder, how filled with awe is this place, and we did not know it. As you get older, you say, thank the goddess, thank Hashem, thank whoever you worship, that we live in beauty and awe.
I want to use your words again, though. We are waves that will rise again, fall again, rise again. We are not solid, but fluid.
Did I say that?
Those are your words.
Wow, that's pretty smart.
I think so. That's why I want you to shed some light on that thought.
I think that what happens as you get older is that you discover you're connected to all of life, and that it's like the herbs on my terrace. You know, the leaves fall off, they turn brown, and the little green shoots sprout. We are part of a continuum. People don't live beyond. My mother lived to 101, but most people don't. There are many people now who live to 110, 107, whatever, but eventually the Malach HaMoavos takes you, the angel of death.
You also, in here, again, it's a character, but there is a need to be in control, whether it's an illusion of control or not. You say, for the character, the need to be in control.
I forgot that. Totally.
Oh, it was. I'll give you the reference even about it. It was even marrying poor men so you could be in charge of paying the bills.
Well, I did that. I mean, I did that, and I like to be in control. I'm an Aries. March 26th. My husband's birthday is also March 26th. We're almost exactly the same age. The reason I gave Vanessa Wunderman a husband who's 20, 25 years older is I have seen what happens to women when they have a much older husband who's like a sugar daddy, and then all of a sudden the husband dies, and in fear of dying, Vanessa's husband is much older, and he suddenly nearly dies.
But there's an experience that he and Vanessa go through in India.
Right.
And there's a love that you must have, because this cannot come out of fiction. Maybe you've never even been there, for all I know, but
No, I've
you've
been
read
to
about
India
it.
a few times.
But you have got to have a love for India, and the way you describe it, from its colors to its people to its tastes to its smells.
I do love India, although I find it not an easy country to visit. I've read piles of Indian writers, and they're great. From Rabindranath Tagore, when I was in my 20s, the great Hindu poet, who won the Nobel Prize back in the day, as the kids say. But I'm fascinated by India. And when my father had died, and I was really struggling to make sense of it, because he adored me and I adored him. We had an Oedipal problem, a huge Oedipal problem. And most successful women had daughters who adored them too much and fathers who adored their daughters too much. I've seen that again and again and again in life. Anyway, when my dad died, I was absolutely bereft. He was a health food freak, and he exercised like a lunatic, and he thought I gave Vanessa, that father, if he stayed on the treadmill in the morning and the night, and he ate enough kelp and enough, what is the thing people eat now, kale, and apple cider vinegar, he would never die. And then And he beat 4 forms of cancer. This is true. And the anesthesia got him in the end. They got the thing out of his gut. They got out all the cancer. But he was in his 90s, and he went cuckoo from the anesthesia. And that happened, I mean cuckoo, he was not mad. He would lift up the New York Times and read the front page, but the Times would be upside down. And he would make up the news. And I saw that. I saw that he had beat the illness, but his mind unraveled from the anesthesia. It's an experience that so many people have had, by the way.
Well, we started this with this connectivity,
right,
and with the shared experiences. Again, your words, whether you remember them or not, the fate of all humans is my fate.
Right.
We are all so alike in our grievances and our troubles.
Absolutely. And you don't get that until you reach a certain age. You know, my husband, who is exactly 1 year older than me, and we have the same birthday, March 26th, and we're both Aries, he said to me, I love getting older. He said, I don't like the fact that I walk more slowly, or that if I don't do my PT, my knees hurt. He said, but I love getting older. And I say, Ken, how can you love getting older? And he said, I see the cycles of life get completed. And every one of my mentors has said that in old age. The woman who first got my poetry published, who was called Grace, Fear of Flying is dedicated to her and my maternal grandfather, Samuel Mirsky. She said, the best thing about getting older is you see how the circles get completed.
Guess what?
What?
We are completed. Our time is up. I can't believe it.
I'm supposed to be a sex writer, Barry. And I'm a writer. I'm a poet first. I always was a poet. I always write poetry.
Well, I'll be happy to let the viewers know there's plenty of sex in this book as well.
Plenty. But a lot of it is funny sex. Sex that goes awry. Because Vanessa goes to zipless.com and she calls herself the Happily Married Woman, which was originally the title of this book, Happily Married Woman. And the crazies who come out of the internet, the people who want to be little dogs and have her pee on the floor, the people who want her to wear a rubber suit with a zipper here and a zipper here, the people, they are so crazy that she doesn't ever sleep with any of them. And what she's looking for, when my husband finished the revision of the book, he said, this book is a love story. It's about a couple who are beshert. And it doesn't matter if there's an erection or not an erection. Anthony Burgess, the great writer who wrote Clockwork Orange and a billion other books, he used to say, in Clockwork Orange, he said, the old in-out. That was intercourse. And I say there's a lot more to sex than the old in-out.
Well, you know, I know we're very close to the end and our time is running out, but that, in Fear of Dying, what we see are the levels of love that exist in all humanity. And they can be very different, and they can be expressed very differently.
Right. And touch. Touch is at the base of it. When my parents were dying and I couldn't communicate with them verbally, I would get into bed and hold them. You know, my mother's memory started to unravel at a certain point, and then I would get in bed and hold her. And I have Vanessa in this book rubbing her father's back, not talking. She is rubbing his back while he's come out of surgery. He's terribly uncomfortable. He's gone a little cuckoo, a very brilliant man who's gone cuckoo. And she stands behind him in a chair and works on his back. She gets on his back in his bed. This is about love, and love is touch.
It's also character. And our time is up, so I'm going to end with these words. Going on is the ultimate test of character, and I want to thank you, dear Erica, for continuing to go on.
You're my ideal reader.
Oh, well, you are my ideal guest. I love you, dear. And thank you guys for joining us. Now, before Erica leaves, I'd like to leave you with these few more words from Fear of Dying. We are held to this life by our connections with others, family, friends, and lovers. Otherwise, we may drift off in space. I'm Barry Kibrick. It is the connections between all of us that keep us grounded. Be grateful for them, and you will not drift off. Thank you, dear Erica.
Thank you, darling.
My pleasure.
Thank you. It's lovely to be here again.
Closed captioning for Between the Lines with Barry Kibrick is made possible by your generous contributions to KLCS Education Foundation. Thank you for your support. To connect with Barry, like us on Facebook and follow us on Twitter at Barry Kibrick. And to contact Barry directly, watch past episodes of Between the Lines, and read his blog, visit us at barrykibrick.com.